This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
Charlotte mayoral candidates Vi Lyles and Kenny Smith face off in a debate. An attorney for the family of a man shot and killed by police calls the shooting horrific, and the impact North Mecklenburg County voters could have on the CMS school bond. Those topics and more next on Off the Record. And good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. So glad you could be with us. This week's guests include Nick Oxner with WBTV News 3, Kirsten Garris with Spectrum News, Mark Garrison with WBT Radio, and veteran journalist B. Thompson. We're so very glad to have you all here with us. Well, PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg hosted a debate Thursday morning with Charlotte mayoral candidates Democrat Vi Lyles and Republican Kenny Smith. Now, during the debate, they were asked, how would you rate the city's handling of the protest in Charlotte? And if you had been mayor, what would you have done differently? So I want to hear first Kenny Smith's response.
You look at the city response, and we had people in all quarters of the city disappointed. You had folks out in the street protesting that were disappointed. You had folks out in the suburbs that were disappointed as well. Had I been mayor at the time, I would have worked harder to make sure we were communicating throughout the entire city. This current mayor spent more time on national news as opposed to local news. We had very important, complex issues such as curfews and things that local citizens needed to have a better understanding of. And unfortunately, our mayor was more interested in trying to promote a national platform for a future office than serving her constituents.
All right, so we just heard Kenny Smith saying that Jennifer Roberts spent a lot of time talking to the national media during this incident last year. What's your take on that? Do you think that was the case? Do you really think that she was trying to position herself for some other national greater office?
Well, she did make herself available to CNN when she wouldn't make herself available to us. So, but I think Kenny needs to recognize he's not running against her anymore. He kind of answered the question saying, I would communicate better, but...
Oh, I don't think he answered the question at all.
No, he really didn't. I mean,
polite.
that's the thing. I mean, he nibbled at the cheese, but then he moved on to criticize a woman who's not even running now. So, yeah, he didn't really answer it.
The thing that strikes me about that is it's very easy for anyone to, as they used to say, armchair quarterback, or the next morning say, well, this is what I would have done, or that's what I would have done. But at this juncture, we need to know, what is your plan for the city now? To me, that makes more sense than even getting into, a lot of time when you do media training with people, you say, don't address the negative. What is your positive that you would do? Because that means you don't have an answer if you're just addressing what somebody else did or didn't do. You need to know, what is it you're going to do?
And I will say that I did watch the entire debate, and this was the first question that asked about leadership, tying it in with the protests. So the other questions in the debate really focused more on both of them, their plans for the future.
Well,
not
but
so
leadership
much.
can't just be bashing someone else and saying,
Exactly.
I'm not going to do X. I mean, there were a lot of good answers that you could have said, I would do Y differently. There were a lot of things that could have been done differently in the protest, and we didn't hear any of that from Kenny Smith.
Okay, now I want to hear from Vi Lyles' response to that very same question.
I remember very much watching those folks move towards downtown. I stayed inside of our downtown area for the next several nights, up every morning at 5 a.m., going into the briefings with the police chief, talking about what could we do. What I would say is that we are going to have to adjust. We're going to have to build trust. You heard the young woman say, this is about trust in the community. And that's why I'm running for mayor, because trust is the most important commodity that we have between a community and government. My role is to make sure that when we have that crisis, we have enough understanding with each other to manage it better.
Okay, so once again, Vi Lyles says trust is the most important commodity that we have between a community and government, and she outlines where she was last year during the debate. What's your take on her response?
Well, she didn't really answer the question either.
No, almost, a little bit
Yeah.
closer.
But what would she do differently? Well, she really didn't say. Now, in fairness to both of them, and I come back to this a lot, the mayor of Charlotte's job is cutting ribbons and kissing babies. The mayor is the chief cheerleader, but the mayor doesn't have any real statutory power.
Well, except we know in the debates or in the protests last year, Jennifer Roberts was solely responsible for being the one who could authorize the National Guard to come in, and she
Right.
didn't do
She
that.
did not do that,
And
yeah.
so when we talk about if you need a reminder of how important mayoral leadership in this city is, that's one there. And neither of the answers from either of those candidates talked
Address
about
that.
what they would actually
But
do.
it's
If you
important
look
to
at-
notice that really, though, it's more, the mayor sets the tone more
Yeah.
than anything
Oh, that's
else.
fair.
It's a
That's
PR issue.
But if we're
And-
looking at this particular debate that was here at TVI and with the League of Women Voters, and if you listen to both of those responses, one dealt more with what somebody should have done, the other dealt with where I was and what I did during that time. So there was more of a connect of what was going on, whether or not she actually did anything. She said, I was there in the center city. I would like to have heard him say, what were you doing at that time? Because you were on city council too. What were you doing? How were you involved? How did you make that communication better? So yeah, both of them still have a lot to say, but if you had put those two answers right next to her, I heard somebody tell me what you were doing and how you were trying to be involved. And I heard somebody say what somebody else didn't do and what they would have done, as opposed to having that done right now.
Yeah,
So
and it's safe to
that's what
say
you gotta look at.
neither one of them were mayor at the time, and no matter how much experience you have, no one can quote unquote prepare for something like that. I mean, I don't think protesters were prepared to do what they did. No one can prepare for something like this, but you can react. And as you kind of mentioned, Vi Lyles talked about where she was, what she did, and she hit on trust. That's what protesters were talking about. They were talking about the lack of trust. Police talking about what we're trying to build trust. So she hit on the keynote, which is trust, and that's what we've been talking about for the past year.
Our next topic, Charlotte Police Chief Kerr Putney met with Latino residents Thursday night. Now, this meeting was about a week after the release of police video showing officers who shot and killed Ruben Galindo in early September. Now, many who showed up last night held signs written in Spanish which said, "Hold my killers responsible, stop killing our families, and caution police." Now, here's what one activist said, and this is from a WFAE report. There's a little bit of frustration because I think most of the people here want to talk about Ruben Galindo, and this has become a conversation about the training of CMPD, and that's a quote from Jose Hernandez Perez with the Latin American Coalition. Is this just, how effective are these meetings when police go out? And is it accomplishing its goals, or is this just a PR ploy on the part of the police department?
Yes.
Yes, it is a PR ploy.
Yes to what?
Well, but yes to both. I mean, look, what they're doing, definitely a PR ploy, right? But it is also better than sitting in your,
And
in
doing
your station
nothing,
and
yeah.
doing nothing. And I applaud to the extent that they're trying. I guess their effort is to be lauded. But I think that comment from that you just read is interesting because the shooting of Ruben Galindo all ties back to how CMPD officers are trained. And I think that ultimately is where the debate should be in the city about training and how they handle these situations.
Well, and when you look at that video, it's very interesting. If you talk even to real backers of police, strong law and order types, when they look at that video, they go, ooh, that was quick. I mean, here's a guy who had told a 911 operator, I'm drunk, I'm high, I just want to give them the gun because I've got to go to court. It's not loaded. Now, granted, you can't necessarily take his word for the fact that it's not loaded, but he comes out with his hands up like this, and the gun is not pointed at anyone. 13 seconds after they call his name, they shoot him. And there's some evidence, if you look closely at the video, he may have at some point dipped his shoulder as if he was going to put the gun down. You can't be sure. I mean, CMPD has drawn a line in the sand. The chief keeps saying, we won't de-escalate as long as you have a gun in your hand. If you have a gun, you're going to get shot.
Which is a
And-
bad problem
Yes.
because they knew that he had a gun. And this goes back to one of the recommendations from the Citizens Review Board of the Keith Lamont Scott shooting. When you're going into a situation where you know you have a gun, like they did with Keith Lamont Scott, like they did with Ruben Galindo,
Right.
let's not just send a couple patrol officers in there to handle the situation. Let's call the SWAT team in. Let's de-escalate. Let's take our time and make sure we have the forces so our officers don't feel like they have to shoot to protect themselves.
Exactly.
Well, I think at this point, I found it very interesting last night and almost ironic that the police department was having a meeting with the Latino community to explain the shooting of a brown man. Outside of the Panthers Stadium last night, there were ministers, community activists who were taking a knee to support players who have said all along it was about police brutality towards black and brown people, not about the flag. I just think the juxtaposition of those two and police always saying shoot first and we'll figure this out later, that concerns me, because now that's what's in most people's head, that if you have to deal with the police, particularly if you're brown or black, the first thing they're going to do is shoot you. And that should not have to be the mindset that an individual citizen has, that should I call the police or should I not call the police? Because the first thing they may do is shoot me. And that's where we are right now, not just in Charlotte, but in America. And we are talking about how should you be training law enforcement officers? How do you deal with language barriers? How do you finally get to the point of realizing all these numbers are not just statistics, these are people, and it's the same people. And when do you come to the understanding that there is something truly wrong here? It's not just the people.
Let me get your take on this. Again, this is another quote from WFAE. It's from another person who attended that meeting on Thursday night. Jamie Bueno is his name. He said, I think nothing got accomplished. Honestly, it was very political. I believe there has to be some charges against some officer. There has to be some type of justice. We're hearing a lot of people in the Latino community cry out, and we certainly saw a lot of people this past Monday night at the Charlotte City Council chamber. They were silent. It was a silent protest, but they were holding those signs and those pictures of Mr. Galindo. Even the attorney came out earlier this week on Monday before that city council meeting, and he described this shooting as horrific. What's your take on the public outcry over this case?
Well, they're trying to show their public outcry in a way that is, civil. They aren't protesting in the street, but they're showing it at the city council. They know that the people in power are at City Hall, and that's where they're going to the people in power and saying, hey, we aren't happy. We want justice. We're here showing you we want justice. And I think they're also showing they want to have a conversation beyond something like this. Like, let's not have a PR, event to talk about police community relations. Let's actually really talk about police community relations. And I think it's interesting, Chief Putney last night talked about the challenges of trying to recruit Latino members to the force, but then also when we did the media training earlier this week, they talked about how they only have about 10 to 15 commands that are taught in Spanish. One of them wasn't put the gun down. So I think this does,
Was not?
Was not.
Really?
Was not. It was hands up.
Yeah.
And that's manos, and that's what we heard in the video, but it wasn't put the gun down. Now, new cadets will be being taught, put the gun down, but I think this whole situation calls into question, well, how much language training is being done? Because even I was there that night when Ruben Galindo was shot, and Chief Putney said there was a language barrier. That was one of the first things he said.
Although it's interesting, I had a chat with George Lauren, who's the attorney representing the officer, and he says that, Galindo was charged with pointing a gun at someone back in the spring, and he said when those officers dealt with him, he spoke English. So there is some question as to what Mr. Galindo did and did not understand. They're insisting that he does speak enough English that he understood the commands. But it was very confusing there because you got one officer in Spanish saying hands, hands, not what do you do with the hands, just the word hand. And then you've got other officers saying drop it, put it down. So there was a lot of confusion there.
But what we are seeing now, as the Latino community grows in this particular region, they are dealing with the same thing that African Americans have been dealing with for years and asking for answers for years. And for too long, general public would simply say, the police won't shoot you unless you've done something wrong. The police don't arrest you unless you've done something wrong. And it's only been in the last few years that we see cases that when you follow it all the way through, the person didn't do anything wrong, or they didn't try to threaten anybody, but they end up dead. And as we see more brown people come into this area, unless this is resolved, not just a language barrier, but how do you communicate with people in general barrier, you're going to see more people dying.
Let's go back to what Kirsten was talking about earlier, the Police Training Academy. Earlier this week, Charlotte Police invited the media to come to the training academy to better understand situations involving police use of force. Now, Chief Carr Putney says that it's important for the media to understand the perspective of an officer. And here's what he told WFAE, and this is, again, from Chief Carr Putney. I think the only way to really learn something is to do it and get your hands dirty and your heart rate up a little bit. Our people do this every day in and day out, and they are critiqued and criticized. That's okay. I prefer it to be when you have context. What are you
Well,
thinking here?
Boy,
They
don't
keep
get me
using that
started.
word context as though no one is ever qualified to have an opinion on anything
Yeah.
unless you've been in their shoes. And that's a really unfortunate view. And I'll challenge them. I mean, they said that exact same thing when we found an officer pressing a gun to a man's head. They wanted us to have context behind that. They want us to have context behind shooting a man with his hands up 13 seconds. They can keep saying that, but I think that comes off as pretty toned down.
Well, for one thing, these are officers who have once again been trained, and you have been licensed to carry a gun, and you're supposed to have more training than the average person on the street who may not know how to react. Of course, reporters don't know how to react. We don't know how to take somebody down, and that was an exercise in see, it's really hard, isn't it? You didn't realize it was so hard.
It was
But
ju-
again, if you are law enforcement, you have been trained, and you have to go back and get updates on your training, just like a physician has to get updates on their training. Then somewhere in there, you have to get past the simple, well, shoot first and ask questions later.
Well, plus, I mean, this is the second time they've done this exact same dog and pony show at the training academy. What in the world, in the name of transparency, does it prove that if I can't effectively put handcuffs on somebody, or if Nick struggles to put handcuffs on somebody? Where's the what does that prove? It just proves it's a good thing we're reporters and not cops. So there's no transparency in that. Yes, it may show they have a hard job. I won't argue that. And if you've got somebody resisting arrest, it's a tough job. And I've actually been with police and watched them wrestle people who don't want to be arrested. But calling reporters in to try to put handcuffs on somebody, that is not transparency.
And I don't think it makes a case for, see, this is why we have to sometimes shoot
People,
somebody.
yeah.
Right.
That was
Right.
not something that made it justifiable. I will go back to the training aspect of it. Psychological tests that you need to do. Not everybody should be licensed to have a gun.
Right, yeah.
And that includes law enforcement.
Police officers have a very hard job to do.
Yeah.
Right? No one at this table, I think, would dispute that. But they also, that's why we hire the best of the best, because you're in a pressure cooker situation. And but to the points both of you guys are made, they are held to a higher standard, like it or not.
Well, let's just pivot a little bit and shift gears. In 3 weeks, Mecklenburg County voters will decide on a $922 million school bond. But will voters support it? It's such a hefty sum, and it's supposed to patch up old schools and help expand some others. According to WFAE Thursday night, the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce issued a statement saying its board isn't happy with CMS's decision over where to build or expand schools. We've also heard the similar thing from Huntersville and Cornelius. Do you think the suburbs could be enough to help sink the school bond?
If the school bond committee does not do a better job of explaining this mountain of money and how it's supposed to go out, we've seen some preliminary things, but it's still not explained enough to justify to the general public. I'll just vote for all of it, and we'll come up with the details later. And particularly for people in North Mecklenburg County, as they're seeing everything grow, and if they don't feel like they're getting enough for children in the north part of the county, yes, they could come out strong enough to sink it, and the rest of Mecklenburg County will be going, what happened?
And also, we have to think about this is it's an election that not many people will be showing up anyway. So you have to really get people out to the polls. And we kind of talked about earlier, North Mech, they may not have much on the ballot, but if they really are upset about this bond enough, they might come out and vote versus people within Charlotte city limits. They might not vote at all. For or against it, but not voting is a vote, as we know. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how much the North Mech crew can kind of rally their support, because a lot of them, I've been talking to Huntersville since they passed that opposition early in September. They basically said there's not enough money going to North Mech. It's going to be one project versus West Charlotte has actually the bulk of the money going to them, but we haven't really heard much from West Charlotte. Maybe, I guess, where is the Charlotte?
And I guess that's what I'm saying
voice
about you
for
have
this?
got to explain this bond better. It's one of the biggest bonds school system has ever done. And you are saying there are all these projects in there, but you've not told people the details of what these projects are about and who gets what. And I'll tell you, if you start messing with the money that West Charlotte's supposed to get, when that's the last predominantly,
They were
it was
added-
the last
they
black
were an
high
add-on
school.
anyway
And you
at
add
the
on like
last
this
minute.
is a last minute kind of thing, then that goes back to years of having promised what you were going to do for this particular school and then not do, and then you add me on at the last minute. And the fact that we have a mayoral election in Charlotte, But there's nothing major to pull out rank and file. You're going to get the people who always vote, who will not miss an election or a primary. Those are the ones who are going to determine what happens this year.
Andrew Dunn, a reporter with the Charlotte Agenda, that's an online newspaper, wrote about this extensively this week. An excellent article. But he makes the point that, during the toll road controversy last year, a lot of people up in the northern part of the county came out strong to vote against Pat McCrory. And we got a new governor, Do you think that outcry from up north will be as strong for CMS?
No, that's not an
For the bond
accurate-
package?
No, that's not an accurate comparison. I mean, I guess it's a good attempt, but it's not. You can't compare the toll road, which affects everybody who lives in North Mecklenburg, to a bond package, which, there might be some people who don't like it, but I think they're two totally different issues. It's not going to have the same turnout power.
And we've had a lot of people who are upset about school reassignment. Also, a lot of parents have pulled their kids out of CMS to put them in charter schools. You think those folks will allow themselves to be swayed when it's time to approve that ballot?
The school system's going through a lot right now. I mean, you talked about the very contentious school assignment. I mean, I only got to Charlotte about less than 2 years ago, and all I heard last year was student assignment. So that is a big thing. And then we also have a new superintendent who really hasn't had a chance to talk about his vision. He kind of was handed this.
Does he have a vision?
Exactly. We don't know yet because he was kind of handed all these things. The bond was really discussed before he got here. So it's tough because, yes, obviously he supports the bonds because that's supporting schools. You can't not do that as superintendent, but it's tough because he didn't really have a hand in shaping these bonds, but he has to support them. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, who shows up. I think the biggest thing is going to be turnout, whether it's mayor, whether it's bond. If you don't show up on November 7th, you
And
really
I will
don't have
say
a
this,
chance.
through all the years with all of the school bonds, there's always a back the bonds committee, and they get some high profile person in the city to head up that committee. Anybody heard anybody heading up a committee this year? I haven't heard anything. So if you don't have a committee that's even out there pushing what these bonds are about, or at least trying to explain what they're about, then you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, the Boy Scouts of America program has voted to allow girls to join Boy Scouts programs. Now, our local NBC affiliate, WCNC, spoke with Mark Turner, who is the Scout Executive of the Mecklenburg County Council of Boy Scouts of America, and he said, we as a national organization of movement, if you will, have an opportunity to serve the entire family. Do you think, Boy Scouts has been around for 100 years or more. Do you think this break with tradition will cause, folks to be upset?
It's not really a break in tradition. Full disclosure, as an Eagle Scout still involved in the Boy Scout program. There have been girls in Boy Scouts for decades through the Venture program. There have been female Scout leaders as long as I've been around. And while this is a change, it's not nearly as drastic as you might think.
All right.
Well, that's really nice, but I think that the ladies should have their own. We quoted some studies where women do better in situations where it is girls, and I just don't think you gotta always lump them together. Does that? I know Nick says that women have been involved, girls have been involved with the Boy Scouts, but why can't we have Girl Scouts? Why can't they be able to do their own, or
not
instead of the Boy
mutually
Scouts
exclusive.
saying you can join us, why can't we have our own?
Well, they're not getting rid of the Girl Scouts.
Right.
It's just either or.
Yeah, providing an opportunity. I mean, I guess technically you could do both.
Do you think the Girl Scouts will eventually welcome boys?
I don't think.
Would that cause an issue?
I say this not being a Girl Scout, but I am a member of some organizations that are just for women, like the Journalism and Women's Symposium. We are only for women journalists, and there's a sense of there's something about women empowering women that you just can't replicate when you add men to the table. No offense, guys, but it's just something about women uplifting each other. And I think it's critical that we do that with an organization like Girl Scouts, where we're starting young,
Yes.
saying the importance of uplifting each other, not tearing each other down. So as a non-Girl Scout, I say, hey, keep going, girl power all the way.
Well, basketball legend Michael Jordan did a pretty remarkable thing this week. He's giving $7 million to open 2 medical clinics in poor areas of Charlotte. Now, it's the largest philanthropic donation he's ever made, and they'll be called Novant Health Michael Jordan Family Clinics, and they are set to open in 2020. A spokesperson said that Jordan wanted to do something after hearing about the poor children in Charlotte having the worst odds of getting out of poverty. That's all relating to that study that puts Charlotte at the 50 mark among the largest cities in the U.S. I'd certainly say this is putting your money where your mouth is, right?
Yes, and I will add, it's about time. Because if this state and this city has supported him in his efforts. For every parent who ever paid a couple $100s for shoes that they really shouldn't have to pay for their children, I think this is a good way to give back to community health. So I don't knock him for giving it. I appreciate you doing it, but I will follow that up with, it's about time.
Well, and I spent some time doing a story a few months ago at a West Side clinic that has been struggling. And I think the thing that I would like to know more about eventually, I mean, it's great what Jordan's doing, but it was a red flag for me that Novant Health is involved a little bit. So does this mean the target population, can they come in and get some free care, some sliding scale care, or is it going to be, you got an insurance card? So I'm a little concerned about the mechanics of how this will work once it's built.
Yep. It will be interesting to see. Mark, you had a very interesting assignment this week at the State Fair. Real quickly, tell us about that.
Oh, yes. I was a judge this week with some media people in Raleigh on some of the best new deep-fried delights at the State Fair. Deep-fried key lime pie.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, man.
No, it was good, though. But my favorite thing was the roasted corn that's slathered in mayo and covered with flaming hot Cheetos.
Wow.
And it sounds weird, but I'm telling you, it's so good. It
Alka
was,
take your
Seltzer,
word for it.
water, and Melanto.
I don't know if I would try.
it was really
That-
good.
that's all
yeah,
you
that was
had.
a fun
Oh,
drive back
and
from Raleigh.
deep-fried cheese curds that tasted like crab bites.
Alrighty.
They were really good, too.
I won't question that.
All right, Mark recommends it. Well, that's about all the time we have this week. Thanks again to our guests, Nick Oxner with WBTV News 3, Kirsten Garris with Spectrum News, Mark Garrison with WBT Radio, and veteran journalist B. Thompson. Now, we want to encourage you to watch WTVI PBS Charlotte on Tuesday night for the mayoral debate. Vi Lyles and Kenny Smith will be taking part in that, of course. They'll talk about toll lanes and transit, protesters and poverty, Charlotte's crime rate, the tax rate. Find out what they have to say about some of the important issues that matter to you. That's this Tuesday night on PBS Charlotte, Tuesday at 8 o'clock. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. From all of us here, we appreciate you watching, and we hope you can join us again next week. Have a good week.
A production of PBS Charlotte.